Daf Tzadi Dalet Amud Beis, 10 lines from the top, Tana Rabbanan. Continuing on with some of the discussion of astronomy. Tana Rabbanan, Chacham Yisrael Aimrim, Galgal Kavu Umazolos Chayzer. The Chacham Yisrael say that the wheel of the zodiac is Kavu, is fixed, and the Mazolas are Chayzrim, and the constellation, they revolve and then return to the place. They revolve around. We'll explain it in a moment. But Chachme Umas Haylam say no, that the Galgal is Chayzer, the Galgal revolves, and the Mazols are Kvuim. Now, the issue over here is that we see during the course of the year and the course of the day that there's movement. That we see that the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. And we see that during the course of the year, the days of the summer, starting from the spring, the days get longer, and the sun has a longer, is visible in the sky for a longer path. It rises rather in the northeast, and it sets in the west, in the northwest, and it has a longer cycle, and the days are longer. As you get closer to the fall and the winter, the days get shorter. So how do we account for this movement, so to speak, the way it seems to be? It seems to be that there's a movement that the sun is in a different position in the winter and in the summer and the spring and the fall. And the sun is in a different position, and we see the different movement, and the days are shorter, the days are longer. Now, the way it's currently understood and nowadays in modern science is that the Earth, it rotates, and it does a daily rotation. So there's the sun, and the Earth rotates. So as the Earth rotates, so different parts of the sphere are exposed to the sun on different times. It makes a daily rotation 24 hours. So the sun will be shining on one part of the Earth in one part of the day, and as it rotates, it will be at different areas. Then there's a second rotation where the Earth rotates around the sun, and so therefore you have the different seasons. So that's the way it's currently understood, but in the earlier days it wasn't understood that way. So how do we account for this movement? So the Chachma Yisrael say the Galgal is Kavua, the wheel is fixed. So the wheel, so to speak, if you have a wheel, if you look at the stars and the constellations being within a wheel, and so we say that the Galgal is Kavua, and the mazolas within that sphere, and the mazolas they revolve, and so the constellations revolve. But the Chachmei Umasayim say no. There's a Galgal that's Chayzer, and mazolas are Kvuim. The mazolas are fixed in place. There's no rotation for the stars and the constellations. They're fixed in the sky, and you have a different wheel that rotates. There's a different wheel that contains where the mazolas are within, and a different one where the sun is. So there's a rotation. And not that the mazolas move, but the sphere itself rotates. So that's the machlokes and how to understand it. Amar Rebbe, Tshuva Rebbe said there's a kasha on the way they understand it, because because we never found that the muzzle of Taurus is in the south, or the Akrav the Scorpio is in the north. Now, if it's the way they say it and that you say that there's different spheres, and that they say the Galgal is Chayzer, well, if the Galgal is Chayzer, if the wheel rotates, so if it's rotating, you should find it that in one time we find that the muzzle is in the south, and one time it's in the north. It should be rotating, and therefore you should find them in different spheres. So l'chayr, it shows that that's not so. That it's not that they are in a sphere that rotates, and therefore you don't find them in the different areas in the north and the south, because therefore it's like the Chacham Yisrael say that the Galgal's Kavua is within a certain sphere, and that sphere is not north-south, and it rotates within the sphere. So the sphere is not on a north-south rotation. It's in the sphere itself, and we say that the Galgal is Kavua, and within that Galgal, which is fixed, which does not rotate, the mazolas move back and forth. So they're within a fixed sphere which does not rotate, and it's not rotating north-south, and the mazolas rotate within, to move back and forth within that sphere. So Moscow Lord Bar Yaakov says it's not a proof. Dilma kevutzina dorechaya. Maybe the spheres rotate like the blade of a mill, iname ketzinor dedasha, like the pivot of a door. Meaning that they do rotate, but maybe they're rotating maybe there's two spheres and the spheres rotate, but the spheres rotate in different on different directions. They rotate on right angles. So maybe the sphere of the mazolois is not rotating with a north-south rotation, and therefore you don't find the different mazolas, the akrav, and you don't find the Taurus and the Scorpio, the Eglah and the Akrav in north and south different locations, because maybe it's not rotating, the sphere is not rotating north-south, but maybe there's two spheres. One is rotating north-south, one is east-west, and therefore the rotation of the mazolas is not rotating to the north-south, and that's why you don't find it. So it's not a raya. Another machlokes is Chacham Yisrael Oimrim b'yom b'chama malach slamatam min rakia. The Chacham Yisrael say that in the daytime the sun is malach slamatam rakia. It travels below the rakia, and that's why you can see it during the day. It's visible during the day. But it travels at nighttime. It's above the rakia, so you don't see it, and that's why it's dark. And that accounts for the day and night, the light and the darkness. But they say no. They say in the daytime it's below the rakia, so therefore it's visible. Ubelayla, it is that the malayla lamata min karka. And at the nighttime, not that it's above the rakia, it's also below the rakia. I mean, it's not positioned relative to the earth. It's not a difference of if it's higher or lower. It's not a question of higher or lower. They're both in the same height relative to the earth. But it rotates below the ground, so to speak. Meaning it's below, underneath the area of the earth. It rotates below the earth. So therefore it's dark. Amar Rabbi Nir Divrenu, he says it's more mistaber the way they say it. Shebayayim mayanas saynim, because in the daytime the wells of water are cold. Ubelayla reischim, and in the nighttime that they're hot. So it's therefore more mistaber to say that why are they hot? Because they go below the earth and they heat up the earth at nighttime, and that's why in nighttime they're hot, but in the daytime they're above the earth, and therefore they don't heat up the mayonas. Again, the way our understanding is like neither of these approaches, the way it's currently understood. Tanya Rabbi Nosson he says that in the summertime the sun is high up in the sky. It's the distance from the earth to the sun is greater, it's higher up in the sky. And therefore the world is hot and the springs are cool, because the sun is further removed, it's further away from the springs, which are below, or further down below, so to speak, below the earth. So therefore the distance is greater and it doesn't heat them up. But in the wintertime, the sun is lower in the sky, but it's also further removed. It's not in the center, it's more in the extremes, and it's further away from the center. And the world is cooler, the springs are hotter because the sun is closer to the ends of the earth, so to speak, and closer to where the springs, the water, is located at the bottom of the earth. And this, of course, does not conform to modern science, but that was the understanding at that time. The sun travels on 4 paths during the course of the year. Nisan v'ir, so in the springtime, v'sivan, Nisan ir v'sivan, malach b'har. So in the springtime, it travels through the mountains, to melt the snow. Tammuz of Elul, in the summertime, malachas b'yishuv. It goes through the civilized areas, the inhabited areas, in order to ripen the crops. Tishrei marcheshen v'kislev, in the fall, malachas b'yamim. It travels through the oceans, to dry out the rivers. Teves, Shvat, v'adar malachas b'midbar, and in the wintertime it goes to the deserts, to keep it away from the planted areas, to keep it away from the civilized planted areas, to ensure that it doesn't dry out what's being planted, the seeds that are planted, to ensure that it's still moist, it's wet, it's irrigated, and it doesn't dry them out. Coming back to our halachas, Rabbi Lezer says that we view derech hachoika. In defining derech hachoika, that we say if someone's derech hachoika, he's poter and he's nidche to Pesach Sheni, it doesn't mean that he is physically unable to come to the Zorah to do the Korban Pesach. It means as long as even if he's outside the entranceway, he's outside the doorway, the entrance or the gateway of the Azora, that's also considered to be the derech hachoika. It means derech hachoika, even though he's able to enter, but he's outside the Azora, it's still considered derech hachoika. Mean to say that even if he's able, and if he wants to, he could come into the Zohar and do the Korban Pesach. He's still considered a derech hachoika, and he's potter v'lo yamrina like kum ayal. And we don't say to him, come inside and do the Korban Pesach. And we don't say, if you come inside and if you don't, you'll be over michayev kares. We learn in the Baraisa, orel shaloi mal on his kares. A person is an orel. He's like a mal. He can't do the Korban Pesach. Now, if he's able to mal himself and he doesn't, Aral Shaloi Mal, he's on his chorus. So Rabbi Lezer says the fact that he could have done it, he therefore is chayiv. He's considered negligent and he's chayiv. So here also, if he's able to come inside, why is he potter? Amar Abai says derech hachoika l'tor vein derech hachoika l'tomei. There's different definitions of derech hachoika. This is a derech hachoika l'tor, meaning when the Torah says that a person is on a derech hachoika, it means, whatever we define as means that he's on a derech, he's outside the Azora. It's not dependent, the criteria is not whether he could or could not come into the Azora. He's outside the Azora, he's derech hachoika, the Torah paterson. But when the Torah says that person is tomei, when he's tomei, or he's an oral, means the Torah says that if he's tomei and he can't do the Korban Pesach, is an oral and he can't mal himself and do the Korban Pesach. Over there, the definition over there is that whether he can or cannot make himself being able to do the Korban Pesach. If he's tomei and he can be matar himself and he's not, then he's on his chorus. He's an oral and he can mal himself and he doesn't, he's on his chorus, because over there the criteria is he able or not to do the Korban Pesach. By derech hachoika, the criteria is not if he's able to or not. If he's b'derech hachoika, the Torah says he's nidche to Pesach Sheni. It's not dependent on whether he's able to or not. So Taisus points out that l'chayr comes out there's an anomaly over here, and it's a very strange situation. Now we say if a person is tomei or he's an oral, now he's able to do the milah, he's able to do the tahara, he's able to do the milah or the tahara, then we say if he doesn't, he's on his chorus. Then if he is matar himself, so he's matar himself, he goes to the mikveh, or he's maled himself, then at that point, if he's outside the Azara, then he's potter. Before he maled himself, before he's matar himself, if he's outside the Azara, we say, unless he's matar, he's chayiv. But at the moment, at the point that he's matar himself, he mals himself, he's outside the Azara, he'll be potter. He doesn't have to come in. He's potter because of B'derech HaChaika. Seems to be a modern Zach. But Taisa says we do find a precedent with this on the principle Kol Roy Labila Ein Bila Mag Heves. Kol She'ein Roy Labila Bila Mag Heves. So here also, we say once he now makes himself able to do the Korban Pesach, but if he's outside the Azara, he's be potter. Rav Amar Tanoi, he said some machlokes Tanoim, what exactly Rabbi Eliezer said. The Sanya Rabbi Eliezer Aimer, Nema Richuk Malka B'Pesach. The Torah says the Gabi Korban Pesach Richuk Malka if he is far away, if he's outside the Azara. V'Nema Richuk Malka B'Meiser, and it also says Richuk Malka B'Meiser. As far as Meiser Sheni has to be brought up. The produce has to be brought up and eaten in Yerushalayim. And if it's Richuk Malkam, he's far away from Yerushalayim, then we say that he is paided, he can redeem it and bring the money to Yerushalayim. But it has to be only if he's outside of Yerushalayim. He can't be paided in Yerushalayim. So Malan Chutz Lachil also, just like over there, Gami Meiser Sheni, we define Richuk Malkam as being outside the place where it's eaten. The Meiser Sheni is to be eaten in Yerushalayim. Richuk Malkam is outside Yerushalayim. Afkan Chutz Lachil also. So here also the Richuk Malkam, meaning it's not the way we learned it in our Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer, that the Richuk Malkam is outside the Azara. No, it's not outside the Azara. Richuk Malkam means he's outside the city limits of Yerushalayim. Just like over there, Lagabi Meiser, the Richuk Malkam is defined as being outside Yerushalayim. Here also, it's the Malkam Achilosa, the place where it's to be eaten. The Korban Pesach is to be eaten in Yerushalayim. So Richuk Malkam is outside the city limits. But Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Huda, I remember Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. No, he says Chutz Lasi also. It's outside Asiyasa, the place where it's being performed. That it's the place where the Asiyah is done, where it's done with it. What does that mean? So just like over there, the Meiser Sheni, what is the Asiyah? What's relevant to it is eating it. So it's outside the city limits of Yerushalayim. Here also, the Asiyah, we're talking about performing the mitzvah of the Korban Pesach, of bringing the Korban. Where is that? That's outside the Azara. So therefore, the Richuk Malkam over here, which is consistent with the way we're learning in our Mishnah, that the Richuk Malkam that we're talking about over here is Lagabi Korban Pesach. It's not outside Yerushalayim, it's outside the Azara. Rav Yosef, when we talk about Tmeim, we know that the Tumah is Hutra B'tzibur, Dechuy B'tzibur, that if Rav of the Tzibur, or Rav of the congregation of Tomei, nevertheless the Korban Pesach is brought B'tumah. How do we define the Tzibur? So he says, B'tmei Machal Rav Oimdim Azor. It's referred to the people who are in the Azor. So we say that it's relevant to the place, like we just said, the place of Asiyah, the place where the Korban is brought. It's the Azor. So when you talk about the Rav of the Tzibur, he says it's not talking about the congregation, the Kahal, in total. It's talking about the people who are bringing the Korban Pesach. It's relevant to the people bringing the Korban Pesach. So that's the people who are on the Azor. Kiman, Kirviyesi Bar Yehuda, Shamri Shum Rabbi Eliezer. That goes according to the shita which we just said, that it's Richuk Malkam is outside the Azara. So therefore, when we talk about the people who are supposed to do the Korban Pesach, or Chayv in the Korban Pesach, and what we define as the Tzibur, who are Tomei, it talks about the people who are in the Azara because they're the ones that have the Chiyuv of the Korban Pesach. But you see, he defines that as being within the Azara, not within the city limits of Yerushalayim. The Sasema says, when we talk about the Oimdim Ba'azara, he says it doesn't necessarily mean that it's Oimdim Ba'azara at this point in time, because we know the Korban Pesach is done with Shalosh Kitos. Are we going to define it for each cut, for each group, this separately, that they're considered a separate kahal in each group, and whether they're roiv of each group or tomer or tor? He says we define it as the kahal, or the people who are in or are going to come into the Azara. So we count the number of the people who are in or who are going to be in the Azara, who are therefore chayv in the Korban Pesach, and that's how we determine the roiv tzibur. So he says, Rabbi Yossi says that we say derech rechaika. He supports this limud that it means only within the Azora because there's a dot over the hay. Then it means that it doesn't mean derech rechaika mamish. It means it's outside the Azora. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Galili Aimer. So he gives another raya to this, another support for derech rechaika, that it doesn't mean derech rechaika mamish. It says, the Torah says derech, son who is on a road, a distant road. Shemeyan imahalach shnaim v'shlosh yomim. You might think, well, he's far away. He's 2 or 3 days travel time away from the Azora. So kishomer b'derech lo haya. It says he was not in a derech. He says if he is person is Torah and he was not on a road, so it doesn't say over here derech rechaika. Here the Torah doesn't say derech rechaika. It says over here that if a person is Torah and he's not on a road, and it says and then doesn't say derech rechaika. Magid shemaskupas azor l'chutz koread derech. So what is the derech that we talked about before? And we saw from outside the askupas azor, the threshold of the azor. So therefore, just like over here, it doesn't say rechaika. What it means is outside the azor. Therefore, even when the Torah says derech rechaika, it means anything outside the threshold of the azora is considered rechaika.